I don't think I can escape your clutch. Gripping me tight, but I love your touch. Maybe I can take you to the penthouse right now. Are you down? I don't think I can escape your clutch. Gripping me tight, but I love your touch. Maybe I can take you to the penthouse right now. Are you down? Henny and ice.
What's up everyone, it's Austin here from Make Pop Music and Austin Hall Audio, and today we are back with another video. And for the video today, I wanted to cover the 5 fundamental key steps that you should keep in mind when you're trying to get a professional sounding vocal or vocal mix. These are things that you should keep in mind no matter what genre you're working in, no matter what style of vocal you're tracking. They're really just the absolute fundamentals that you always need to keep in mind. So within this video, we're going to talk about getting a good source signal, so getting a good clean vocal to actually work off of, and then we're going to talk about handling frequencies with things like EQs and de-essers. We're going to talk about handling dynamics with things like compressors and clip gain. We're going to talk about sending stuff out to send, so reverbs, delays, modulation effects, and then I want to go over a little bit of my mindset when I'm actually putting together like a vocal arrangement and vocal production, because all of those things, no matter what specific tools you use, no matter what the order of your actual vocal chain is, are kind of just the 5 key features that I make sure that I'm keeping in mind whenever I'm diving into a vocal tracking session or a vocal mix session. So we're going to hop into Cubase so I can show you exactly how everything looks and feels and sounds, and then by the end of the video you should have a good understanding of some of the fundamental steps that you should be taking when you're working on your vocals and your vocal mix. Let's hop in and let's check it out. Alright, so now we're actually in Cubase. Let's talk about the 5 key fundamental steps of getting a good vocal mix and a good vocal production, and of course that has to start with getting a good, clear, clean vocal to start with. So we've done a whole video about this in the past, so if you want to go watch a video to see how to like minimize room noise and kind of where you need to stand in terms of the vocal for proximity effect, go check out that video because it is like a 30-minute video that's just super in-depth about only tracking. But for this video, I just want to mention a couple things. Number one is going to be, what mic do you use? You need to know if you're using a tube mic, an FET mic, what kind of style is the vocalist, are you looking for a mic that's bright, dark, saturated, and then other than that, you need to make sure that your room is decently treated so you're not going to get a bunch of reflections, because if you have a bunch of room noise in your actual vocal recording, what's going to happen is as you compress it later, that's just going to really start to bloom out and sound disgusting, and it's not going to give you that tight, bright, pop, punchy vocal that you're looking for. And then other than that, just understanding like proximity effect. So where's the vocalist standing in terms of how close are they to the mic, how far away are they from the mic, how much low mid do you want built up, and just kind of figuring out where they need to stand. So having a good mic, having the right placement, and then making sure you're in a decent room really is half the battle when it comes to actually tracking vocals. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and show you what my vocal sounds like with nothing on it. The vocal chain for this song was the Lewitt Audio LCT 1040, and a big reason that I've been liking that lately, they sent it over for me to try and I've been using it for about a month and a half, is because earlier how I was saying you have to pick between a tube mic or an FET mic and then what style mic you want. This mic actually comes with that external unit that it's showing in the B-roll clip, so you can choose if you want a tube mic, an FET mic, do you want to blend the two, do you want your mic to be dark, saturated, warm, clear, you have your attenuation pad. So that really helps you get a good clear source signal, and then I was running that into my Heritage Audio HA81A, which is kind of like a 1073 style preamp, which just smooths out the top end, gives me a little bit more warmth, and yeah, here's what it sounds like with nothing on it.
Fun. I don't think I can escape your clutch. Gripping me tight, but I love your touch. Maybe.
So I do have tuning on it. It's a super tuned song, it just kind of fits the style, but you can hear that this is a super dry vocal. We don't really have any room noise.
Fun. I don't think I can escape your clutch. Gripping me tight, but I love your touch. Maybe.
And I did track it on the saturated setting, kind of halfway between tube and FET, and that is giving me a lot of low mids, and it's giving me a nice bright top end. So once we kind of see what we're working with, this is what it sounds like with nothing on it. Now we can attack it in the mix. So let me go ahead and show you what some of this mix sounds like with no vocal. So if we put the vocal in, you'll hear pretty quickly that it sounds great, but we do still have a lot of like low end that we're not going to need. So the first step that I like to do, and this is going to be step number 2 of getting a good clean vocal, is just tackling some of those frequencies. So I like to EQ first, and then I'll kind of figure out where I need to go from there. So let's go ahead and take a listen.
I don't think I can escape your clutch. Gripping me tight, but I love your touch. Maybe I can take you to the penthouse right now. Are you?
So it's a great clear vocal, but we're gonna wanna EQ some of that low mid and low end out. All right, so what I'll do for now is I will just solo this vocal so we don't have anything else going on, but let's go ahead and take a listen as I make some EQ moves.
I don't think I can escape your clutch, gripping me.
I'll pretty much always at least go for some kind of like roll off below like 100, 120.
I don't think I can escape your clutch, gripping me tight, but I love your touch. Maybe I can take you to the penthouse right now. Are you?
I'll get rid of some of this like 250. So if you're finding that your vocals are kind of boomy and just really chesty and they sound a little muddy in the mix, this 200 to kind of 300 range is where I'll go first. You'll hear it right here.
I don't think I can escape your touch, gripping me tight, but I love your touch. Maybe I can take you to the penthouse right.
And then I'll clean up some of these mids too, because it still sounds a little kind of like honky and still has like some of that boxiness.
I don't think I can escape your clutch, gripping me tight, but I love your touch. Maybe I can take you to the penthouse right now.
And then I'll do kind of one little cut up here with the high mids, especially since we've taken out so much low end.
But I love your touch. Maybe I can take you to the penthouse right now. Down. Henny and ice got me faded, but we can go around till the sun comes up. I just want to get you out.
So I'm going to play around with these for a minute and kind of show you a final thing. But really what I'm trying to do is clean up some of those low mids, clean up some of that like sharp high mid, and then just a little bit of sibilance. So let me adjust this and then I'll kind of show you what the final looks like. So what I ended up doing is I just swapped this kind of high mid cut to like 2K.
Keep your clutch, gripping me tight. Take it.
Eased up on that 12K cut and then just kind of rolled off this a little bit more gradually, almost to give me like a shelf. So here's what it sounds like before and after.
I don't think I can escape your clutch, gripping me tight, but I love your touch. Maybe I can take you to the penthouse.
I really like to do this because what I'll do is I'll kind of start to clean up some of the low end of the vocal. So once I do compress it in a minute, it's not an absolute disaster into that compressor. Because if you have too much low end, especially with compression plugins and not analog compressors, it's going to drive that compressor way too hard and it's just going to get super dark and thick and muddy immediately. So I'll generally try to tame some of those low end and low mid issues, and then we'll have this.
I don't think I can escape your clutch, gripping me tight, but I love your touch. Maybe I can take you to the penthouse.
So we're already doing better. The next thing that I want to talk about in terms of taming the frequencies is de-essing. So you can kind of hear, especially as we've sucked out a lot of that low mid, we're getting a little bit of sibilance.
I don't think I can escape your clutch, gripping me tight, but I love your touch.
You can hear on escape and clutch and touch, any of those T's, TH, S, SH, F sounds, anything that's going to be kind of a harsh consonant, you're going to want to tame that, and you can either do this before or after compression. I'll do it both, so let's just go ahead and show you what that looks like. So for my de-esser, all I have is that Pro Q, and then I'm going to have this, and this is kind of just the default setting. I've just made the range and the threshold a little bit different, so we have this.
I don't think I can escape your clutch, gripping me tight, but I love your touch. Maybe I can take you to the penthouse right now. Are you down? Henny and ice got me faded, but...
And it's just taking a little bit of that harshness off just so it's not going to rip your head off, especially once you compress it in a second. Another little trick that I like to do is add a second de-esser. So I'll kind of have ones for the more kind of TH sounds, and then I'll have one for the really sharp S's and T's. So for my second de-esser, I'm going to use the Waves de-esser. There's a Pensado preset in here that's really, really great as a starting point, and then I'll just adjust the threshold as needed. And typically when I'm de-essing, I like to get between like 2 and 4 dB of reduction or attenuation. So it sounds like this.
I don't think I can escape your clutch, gripping me tight, but I love your touch. Maybe I can take you to the penthouse right now.
And you can see that that is really, really smoothing those S's out. So between those two de-essers, I'm able to take off slightly different areas, and it's not going to get lispy, it's not going to get dark, it's not going to get really kind of weird and phasey and wonky, because if you de-ess too much, you're going to run into that lisp, you're going to run into issues where it sounds like the vocal is just extremely dark. This mic really shines as being a super bright mic, so I still want to keep that, but I just need to tame some of the sibilance, especially after we compress. So that's going to be step 2, just controlling some of those frequencies with things like EQ and de-essing. Let's go ahead and go to step 3, which is taming dynamics. All right, so now we're gonna look at how to handle dynamics when you're mixing vocals. There's a couple different key things that you can do. There's compression, which is gonna be the most popular. And typically what I like to do is split my compression up into a couple of different compressors. That way I don't have one thing working way too hard. Typically in a dense pop mix like this, you're gonna want to compress the vocals pretty decently because it is just so thick, there's so much low end, and you need those vocals to be nice and tight and consistent. And what compression does is it kind of tames out some of those dynamics. So it'll bring the low parts up, it'll bring the high parts down, and just kind of gives you a thickening and just a little bit tighter response. So typically what I'll do is I'll mute both compressors and kind of show you what I'm doing. So here's a vocal with no compression.
I don't think I can escape your clutch, gripping me tight, but I love your touch. Maybe I can take you to the penthouse right now.
What I tend to do is I'll go for something pretty fast, like an 1176, so you can use it from waves. I'm using the Slate one right here in the virtual mix rack. And for this song in particular, I opted to go for the 76 Modern. And I just have the high pass sidechain on, I have the second circuit on, and then typically for an 1176, it's just a super fast compressor in general. So I like to have my attack typically between like 3 and 6 on here. So here's 3, here's 6. But one interesting thing to note is that the attack is actually reverse. So it goes from slowest on the left to fastest. So if you want a really, really fast attack, I could put it all the way at 7. If you want a slower attack on the 1176, which to be fair is still pretty fast, you can drag that all the way back to 1. I tend to like it right around here, and then I'll just have a super fast release. Release also works from slow too fast. So a lot of compressors do it opposite. I just want you to know that that's how an 1176 works. And then typically I'm going anywhere between like 3 to 5 dB of gain reduction, and this is really just to catch the peaks. So I'm not doing a lot of like thickening or bringing stuff up. This is really just to make sure that the vocal's not all over the place. So here's what it sounds like with the 1176 engaged.
I don't think I can escape your clutch, gripping me tight, but I love your touch. Maybe I can take you to the penthouse right now. Are you down? Henny and
Granted, this is not gain staged and gain matched, so you are going to get a little bit louder vocal, which is going to just automatically make it sound a little bit more pleasing, but you can hear how it's pulling in those transients. And then to just kind of smooth the entire vocal out, what I'll do is I'll use something like a slower compressor, so like an LA2A or the custom opto compressor or a CL1B. And typically, as you can see here, we've got this a bit slower. We've got this at still like a 4 ratio, and I've got this on the smooth setting with 100% mix. And then this is really simple. You just have your peak reduction right here. You don't really have attack and release to work with. It's just a super simple compressor, and it sounds great. And that's just going to kind of bring everything a little bit more in. So the first compressor is taming those peaks. This one's kind of thickening it as an entire unit.
I don't think I can escape your clutch, gripping me tight, but I love your touch. Maybe I can take you to the penthouse right now. Are you down? Henny and ice got me faded, but we can go round to the sun.
So here's what it sounds like with no compression.
I don't think I can escape your clutch, gripping me tight, but I love your touch. Maybe I can take you to the penthouse right now.
And you can kind of hear how that does start to add in some of those low mid harmonics. So that's a big reason that I take so much low end and low mids out before I hit these compressors. Because if I go back to the EQ, listen to how this sounds if I turn off this initial EQ.
I don't think I can escape your clutch, gripping me tight, but I love your touch.
It's just a lot of low mids, and it's really not going to sit in the mix. And so typically, those are the two compressors that I'll always use. I'll always start with an 1176 and the custom opto or CL1B or LA2A. So fast compressor, slow compressor. And then in a song like this where I want the vocals to be super aggressive, super in your face, super bright, what I'll do is I'll use something like RVox or like a CLA vocals compressor, something that's kind of just a one-stop shop, really nitty-gritty compressor. And that to me is just going to give it a nice little final touch. So let me show you what that RVox sounds like. So here we have RVox from Waves. It's really simple. There's no attack, there's no release. It's all at a set threshold and everything like that. You're just going to drag the compressor down depending on how much compression you want.
I don't think I can escape your clutch, gripping me tight, but I love your touch. Maybe I can take you to the penthouse right now. Are you down? Henny and ice got me faded, but we can go round till the sun comes up. I just want to get you.
And I really like the RVox because since there's not a lot of fiddling, you're not going to run into accidentally getting a pumpy vocal if you overcompress it. It's really just tucking everything in nice and tight. And I just feel like this adds a nice little bit of like upper mid harmonic. It almost just gives it a little bit of saturation. And so now in the actual mix, we have this.
I don't think I can escape your clutch. Gripping me tight, but I love your touch. Maybe I can take you to the penthouse right now. Are you down?
So it's a lot brighter, it's a lot more in your face. It's a bit louder, so we'll handle that all in a second. But that's pretty much everything when it comes to compression. And then we've already talked about handling frequencies, but typically after the compressor, I'll also add like a de-esser and an EQ. So let me go ahead and turn on a final EQ and show you what it sounds like. So here's the EQ moves that I chose to do after a compressor. You can see that we're just taming those low mids, kind of mid area one more time. And with this, we're actually using some dynamic EQ. So this is really going to control this.
I don't think I can escape you. Maybe I can take you to the penthouse right now. Are you down?
So those three guys right there are controlling the super boomy low end, the kind of chesty, muddy, kind of low mids, and then that boxy mid section right here. And then I'm taking just a little bit of that like telephonic 12K, or I'm sorry, 1200.
Maybe I can take.
And then doing one little dynamic EQ up here.
I don't think I can escape your clutch. Gripping me tight, but I love your touch. Maybe I can take you to the penthouse right now. Are you down?
And that's going to take off some of that volume as well, just to kind of set it in the mix a little bit better. One thing that I can kind of mention here is that with things like EQ, just because you're controlling frequencies doesn't mean that it has to be static. So here I've chosen to do dynamic cuts. So what that's going to do is you can set a threshold, and it's not going to engage that EQ curve until it hits that threshold. So this is really nice for things like this low end right here, that if I scoop it all the way out, it's just going to really thin out that vocal and sound a little bit wimpy and really take a lot of the body out. But what I can do is I can set the threshold so it only is ducking out that extra little bit when it needs to.
I don't think I can escape your clutch. Gripping me tight, but I love your touch. Maybe I can take you to the penthouse right now.
And then same with this top end. If I take that out, it's going to thin that vocal out, and it's going to kind of have this like weird hole in the high mids. But if I leave it like that on dynamic, it does a little bit of like de-essing, de-harshing. And that's a really, really good way that instead of driving a de-esser or something like Soothes way too hard where it starts to get weird and artifacty and lispy, just having a little bit of dynamic EQ can really be a lifesaver on this. So here's what it sounds like now with a good quality vocal, some frequency handling, some dynamic handling in the mix.
I don't think I can escape your clutch. Gripping me tight, but I love your touch. Maybe I can take you to the penthouse right now. Are you down? Henny and ice got me faded, but we can go round to the sun.
And what I tend to do is mix my vocals a little thin and a little bright, because this next step that we're going to talk about will bring some of that back in. So now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about using things like sends and modulation and spatial effects. And this is a question that I get a lot on the channel. So I'll walk you through one by one. Just a quick little explanation. If you don't know what a send or an effects track or a send and return is, it's basically when you set up a plugin on either a send or an effects track, depending on what your DAW calls it, and that plugin is going to basically act independently from this vocal chain, and then you can feed that in a certain amount. So it's really great for things like if you're going to use a chorus or a doubler on a vocal. Instead of dragging that right in, this basically gives you the option to kind of have a dry wet mix. So let me solo this vocal so I can kind of show you what I mean. So let's go down to this parallel widening and just show you what we're working with. I have a de-esser right here just to make sure we don't hit the Roland Dimension D too hard. And then we have a Roland Dimension D on setting 3. Super easy chorus. It goes on every mix that I do. And this is just going to add a nice little bit of width. So as I engage this, you'll kind of hear where it starts to go.
I don't think I can escape your clutch. Gripping me tight, but I love your touch. Maybe I can take you to the penthouse right now. Are you down? Henny and ice got me faded, but we can go round till the sun comes up. I just wanna get you out that little blouse right now. Are you down?
And it's pretty subtle. It's just adding a nice little bit of width. And I'll typically do that widening just to make sure that a vocal's not a little bit stale and a little bit boring. It's a little bit, a little tiny bit of subtle mixing, and the mix just sounds really nice.
I don't think I can escape your clutch. Gripping me tight, but I love your touch.
To me, it just gives it a nice little pop sheen. So typically, I'll do the vocal widening first, and then I'll set up another send where I have a short reverb. So here's what that kind of sounds like. Let me go ahead and engage that.
I don't think I can escape your clutch. Gripping me tight, but I love your touch.
And again, I'm going to de-ess it a little bit more before I go into this, just so I'm not getting super sibilant room noise. And then for my short reverb, I like to use Verb Suite. There's a really nice small vocal setting in here from the BM7, which is my favorite like analog digital reverb of all time. And so, yeah, there is this kind of short vocal room, and it sounds amazing.
I don't think I can escape your clutch, gripping me tight, but I love your touch.
And what this is doing is it's just kind of giving it a little bit of almost like a slap back, a little bit of width, and it really helps the vocal kind of tuck into a mix nicely. One thing to keep in mind is if you're using these as sends, you're going to want to always have the wet at 100%. If you're using them as just like an insert on your actual vocal chain, you can dial this back to wherever you want, but I like to have them on sends with 100% wet because we will see with the long reverb that we're about to talk about how that really makes a huge difference. So here's what it sounds like if I adjust that short reverb all over the place.
I don't think I can escape your clutch, gripping me tight, but I love your touch. Maybe I can take you to the penthouse right now. Are you down?
And in the mix, it sounds a little bit like this.
I don't think I can escape your clutch, gripping me tight, but I love your touch. Maybe I can take you to the penthouse right now. Are you?
It's super subtle, but it adds a nice little bit of something something. The next thing that we can talk about, let's go ahead and talk about my other reverb send, and that is a long reverb. So I'll show you what this sounds like and what it looks like. And this is a huge reason that I like to use sends for my delays and reverbs for vocals, is because we have the reverb right here, so it's like a 4.5 second plate. It's a really long reverb. Here are the settings if you want to copy it. It's not doing anything too crazy.
I don't think I can escape your clutch, gripping me tight, but I love your touch.
But when you do it on a send, you have the option of kind of mixing that reverb or that delay or whatever you have on the send independently. So with reverb, a lot of the time, I like to cut out the low end, cut out the top end, and then sometimes I'll even do like some dynamic cuts right here just to make sure that it doesn't get nasally, especially depending on the room or the vocal that we're using.
I don't think I can escape your clutch, gripping me tight, but I love your touch. Maybe I can take you to the penthouse right now.
And you can hear when we engage that EQ that it immediately tightens up that reverb. So especially in the mix, let's go ahead and listen what it sounds like if we don't have this EQ on with the reverb, and then once we put it back on.
I don't think I can escape your clutch, gripping me tight, but I love your touch. Maybe I can take you to the penthouse right now. Are you down? Henny.
And that's how I'm able to use so much reverb and delay in my vocal mixes and not have it get muddy, not have it get chaotic. It's just really taming it on the send with something like an EQ. You can even do things like saturating it, adding extra effects after this. And this really just gives you kind of a parallel chain that you can use for your vocal, just to really make sure that you have the flexibility over every single element that's going over it. Another thing that you can do with reverb is you can have a special track that you kind of sidechain to your vocal. So the reverb that we've talked about so far kind of goes the entire time. It's not doing anything too crazy. But let me show you what happens in the chorus. So here we have a chorus lead vocal, and we have this vocal reverb right here. So this was an extra track that we created. And what we did was put a compressor on this, and I have this compressor sidechained to this lead vocal. And so the lead vocal in the chorus, when it plays, it won't play this super long, bright, shiny reverb. It'll just kind of duck out, so you'll hear it right here.
When the morning comes, I know that I'll be alone in this bed. Just know that it was worth it.
So it's a really nice way to kind of automate some reverb and delay throws that you don't have to go in and you don't have to do yourself. So I don't do it in every mix. I just figured that it's kind of a cool trick and it's something that you should keep in mind. So if you like, doing your own reverb throws and delay throws like that, try sidechaining the reverb to your vocal. Other than that, we have a couple more sends to talk about. We have a couple delays. We have a quarter note, which is kind of my main delay that I use.
A little baddie in a drop top coupe out front. Swear that she gon' ruin my life, or have some fun.
So this is doing a quarter note. I'm using repeater. We've got it on a spread, so it is a stereo delay. And then we're filtering out some top end and some low end on this. Again, 100% wet. And then filtering out quite a bit with an EQ.
A little baddie in a drop top coupe out front. Swear that she gon' ruin my life, or have some fun. I don't think I can escape you.
And then what I like to do is I like to send this delay out to a reverb. So I'll send it to that long reverb just so the delay is not super dry and super awkward. You could also pop in a reverb on this delay send and then kind of make it a little bit more wet and sit into the mix a little bit better there. And then I'm doing the same thing kind of with an eighth note delay. I'm not even going to take up too much time showing that because it's exactly the same. But that's what my lead vocal typically goes through is parallel widening, short reverb, long reverb, eighth note delay, quarter note delay. Sometimes I'll do a slapback delay. I didn't do it for this song, but adding these in adds a huge difference. Let me show you.
I don't think I can escape your clutch. Gripping me tight, but I love your touch. Maybe I can take you to the penthouse right now. Are you down? Henny and ice got me faded, but we can go round till the sun comes up. I just wanna get you out that little blouse right now.
So adding in those spatial effects is majorly important to getting a really good sounding vocal in your mix. And then the last step that I want to talk about, because we are running long here, is nailing the vocal arrangement. And so what I mean by this is there's only so many things that you can do with a vocal mix that will make a vocal really set out and stand out on its own. So let's take a look at this chorus. This chorus is a falsetto chorus, and if I mute all the other vocal production and just have the lead vocal, you'll hear how it immediately just does not really hold up. It's just too busy, it's too thick. This is not gonna be enough.
Baby, I can taste the perfume on your neck. Dig your nails all in my back. 'Cause I'm just another broken heart that you've got to collect.
So when you're worrying about getting a good vocal mix, make sure you have enough vocals to do the arrangement that the mix calls for. I have some wide guitar, I have some synths, I have a really huge bass, I have some busy drums. I need a lot more than one lead vocal. So what I've got going on here is I've tracked the same exact thing 2 more times. Same chain, panned out left, panned out right, turned down about 4 dB. So here's what the duplicates on the side sound like.
I can taste the perfume on your neck. Dig your nails all in my back. 'Cause I'm just another broken heart that you've come to collect. When I'm on it.
And what that does is it adds a little bit of stereo width, and it also just adds a little bit of thickness. So if I go into the mix now, you'll hear that if we turn on that left vocal and that right vocal, again, sang 2 completely different times. So we have 3 takes of this chorus, we get something like this.
Baby, I can taste the perfume on your neck. Dig your nails all in my back. 'Cause I'm just another broken heart that you've come to collect. When I'm on.
So by having those side vocals there, it saves me a lot of work mixing that lead vocal because I don't have to have it so loud that it starts messing up the balance between other elements of my mix. And then adding things like harmony. So in this song, we just did unison and octave lower. We have this.
I can taste the perfume on your neck. Dig your nails all in my back. 'Cause I'm just another broken heart that you've come to collect. When I'm.
And then having things like that vocal reverb that we talked about earlier.
It's a perfume on your neck. Dig your nails all in my back. 'Cause I'm just another broken heart that you've come to collect. When I'm.
And then something that I really like to do is do an artificial low vocal, and this kind of thickens it up. I actually have this going through the verses as well, and it sounds a little bit something like this.
I don't think I can escape your clutch. Gripping me tight, but I love your touch. Maybe I can take it to the.
And typically all you really need to do for that low vocal is have something like auto tune, just tune it down a whole octave. So we're down 12 semitones, and then I'll add something like a doubler. And then typically I'll just de-ess that so hard because you don't want any sibilance. And tuning it down an octave puts this like really weird S sound in like the 1 to 2K region. So de-ess the crap out of it, put a doubler on it to give it some stereo width, tuck it under a vocal, and you get this.
I don't think I can escape your clutch. Gripping me tight, but I love your touch. Maybe I can take you to the penthouse right now. Are you down?
And so we have that going throughout this chorus as well, just to thicken it because, again, it's such a dense, kind of busy, big chorus. So here's what it sounds like.
I can taste the perfume on your neck. Dig your nails all in my back. 'Cause I'm just another.
And then I even did the same thing with the vocal that was sang an octave lower.
Just another broken heart that you've come to collect. When the morning comes, I know that I'll be alone.
So now, between getting a good quality vocal handling some of the frequency issues, handling some of the dynamic issues, sending it out to some different delays and reverbs to give it some space and some width and some vibe, and then layering up this vocal arrangement to really fit within a mix, we do get a really nice, bright, but still punchy and clean pop vocal.
I think I can escape your clutch, gripping me tight, but I love your touch. Maybe I can take you to the penthouse right now. Are you down?
And then in the chorus,
I can taste the perfume on your neck. Dig your nails all in my back, 'cause I'm just another broken heart that you've come to collect. When I'm running, 'cause I know that I'll be alone in it.
and there you have it. The chain may change every song. You may use a different mic. You may have a different style song. You may swap up the order of your compressors and your EQs and your de-essers. But typically, 99.9% of the time, you can get a really, really good vocal just by following these 5 key fundamental steps and doing them in your own order with your own settings. All right, and that pretty much does it. As you can see, starting with a clean vocal at the start is really a big key feature. It doesn't matter if you're using a $200 mic or a $20,000 mic, just make sure that you're taking the steps. And like I said, if you want to check out that video where you can see super in detail descriptions of how to actually track good, clear vocals, go check that out. It's in the description below. If you have any other questions or if you want to know anything else about my chain or anything like that, let us know in the comments down below. If you like this video, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe because it helps us out on the channel a ton. And then other than that, let us know what videos you want to see in the near future. That's going to do it for this video. We'll be back next week with more content. Much love, everyone. Peace.